taxpayer funding of teachers unions. That is the headline for this week. So
love it.
We are live now. I want to thank everybody for hopping on. Thanks to our guest, Brian Lenney, Senator from Idaho, Chip Rogers, my podcast co-host from Americans for Fair Treatment, CEO there, and letting people hop on. StreamYard's looking a little different today. I can't see myself or Chip, but I know we're on there. But if you guys can, if you can go to my X account, if you can see it, if you can retweet it, we'll be able to maximize views there. I'm going to retweet myself too, so that we can maximize views. Yes, it looks like it's working. Idaho banned taxpayer funding for teachers unions. Which state will be next? I don't even know which states have already done this. I know some of them, like my own, have banned collective bargaining in Texas, but not sure how many other states have gone as far as banning taxpayer funding of teachers unions. So thanks so much for everybody for hopping on. I want to let's just get into it. I'm Corey DeAngelis, the co-host of Red Pen Podcast. I'm a senior fellow with Americans for Fair Treatment, in addition to my role as a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. My co-host is Chip Rogers, as usual. He is the CEO of Americans for Fair Treatment. He was the majority leader of the Senate in Georgia for 2 terms in a row, and he has many other accolades as well that always make me jealous. So I'm not going to go over all of them. But Senator Brian Lenney joins us today on the Red Pen Podcast. He's a senator from Idaho, one of the states that's making moves on education freedom. It's recently passed school choice in some form or the other. And this year, the biggest victory that we've been celebrating nationwide, I think, has been this bill to ban taxpayer funding of teachers unions. So thanks for joining our show, Brian.
Hey, of course, it's a fun topic. So, hopefully some other states can follow suit with what we just did. Technically, we did it this month. So, it wasn't that long. It was just a few weeks ago that we got it done. So.
Yeah. So Chip, is his video paused for you, or is that just on my end? Okay.
It was paused for me. I think he's back.
Brian, I think you're back. Okay. Brian, could you give us a little bit of a rundown of what exactly does this do? A lot of people hear taxpayer funding of teachers unions. Why in the world was this happening to begin with? Why did we need a bill to get rid of it? And could you give us, just details, and then also, what was was it an easy battle? Does this, Republicans control the House and Senate in Idaho? You'd think it'd be easy. Was it just basically put it up for a vote and it was the end of the day, or what's the story behind the whole push?
Hey, you guys were good now on the video?
Yep.
Cool. Hey, that's a couple questions there, Corey.
Yeah.
But I think if we start at the problem, so the funny thing is I think it's really important for people to know, in Idaho and other states who want to do this, it truly was a team effort. I was the one who did the final kind of kill shot at the end, like more for the Mortal Kombat fans, like fatality. Like that was the easy part. It was a team effort of talking to people, making sure the votes were there. We didn't want to do what we did, which we'll get into, because it was not a traditional way to get it done, but we got it done. We didn't want to basically kind of, we basically did a Hail Mary procedure in the Senate to get it done. And I'll get into how it all panned out. But we didn't want to do that if the votes weren't there either. We didn't want to do it just to be, make a stunt or, make headlines. If the votes were there, we wanted to get it done. And we got it done. So, if you look back, we've been trying this. So I've been in the Idaho State Senate this is my 4th year, 2026. This is my 4th year. I will win my election in a few weeks, and I'll be in there for at least another 2 years, and we'll see what I want to do. But, we've been trying this for 3 years now to get this done. And kind of 100,000 foot view, what this bill does, and I believe 7 other states have done it. I don't have them right in front of me, but what this bill does is it says teachers union activity cannot be funded by taxpayers anymore. And most people say, like, what are you talking? What? I didn't know we were doing that. Well, I didn't know we were doing that either until like 3-4 years ago. So basically, what our bill did is it cut off teachers starting July 1st in Idaho. Idaho taxpayers will not fund teachers union activities, and I can get into like the specifics of all that. But I mean, I read a study recently on a site that said, I believe it was the last 10 years, but it might have been just the last 5 or 6 years, that teachers unions have contributed over $660 million to left-wing groups. I mean, everyone knows that teachers unions are typically left-wing, left-leaning. So we said, I don't think Idaho, Idaho was paying, the Idaho Education Association collects, well, I guess until July 1st, they still will. But Idaho school districts, I should say, are processing over $4 million a year in teachers union dues through our public payroll system for free. And about 25% of that, and I'm just talking kind of rough figures, about 25% of that goes right to the NEA, the National Education Association. Most people know that's a kind of the mothership, who the the Wall Street Journal called the most powerful wing of the Democratic Party. So we can get into the details, but basically what we did is we said, we're not going to do this anymore. You can be in the teachers union, you can do collective bargaining, you can pay union dues. We're just not going to pay for it and use our accounting systems and our public schools to help you do it. So that's the general gist of it.
Senator, you make a lot of good points there. And I want to follow up a little bit on the reaction you get from just average Idaho citizens. And I mean, we always have to remind people, first of all, these unions are private entities, right? I know they're attached to public sector workers, but this is a private entity that is engaging in campaigning, electioneering, policy discussions, lobbying, and all these things. The idea that taxpayers would use their money or have their money that is extracted from them to pay for a private organization to then lobby against the very taxpayers who are funding the bill is just, it's mind-boggling that this ever occurred. But I suspect when you talk to, again, the average Idaho citizen, they don't know that this stuff is going on. And some people might not really even understand that these are private entities, these public sector unions.
Yeah, and it's not actually, our original bill had a much larger scope, and we can get into kind of what happened to the original bill and what we came up with as a solution that still got it done. But it's not just, people don't realize this, these public sector unions, it's police, it's firefighters, it's cities, it's counties, our taxpayer money funds all kinds of activities and lobbyists that end up coming full circle and lobbying against, like it comes full circle and we're paying for our own demise in a sense. So with this one, we just wanted to take one bite of the apple and say, hey, teachers unions, people don't want to be funding this. There's things. So people say, well, what are you talking about? So one I already mentioned, right, is the payroll. So when you get, everyone gets their pay stub if you're a W-2 employee and it has, health insurance, 401k, whatever you're taking out. So the union dues were automatically taken out, and they currently are being automatically taken out. So that's, and most teachers just kind of like, yeah, just let them do it, whatever. But it's like, no, if you want to pay the union, but we're not going to use our payroll systems and accounting, mechanisms, whatever you want to call it, to do it. I have pages of examples, but a couple more as far as like, well, what are you specifically talking about? There are 51 school districts paying teachers to skip class for union work. There's a school district that has a monthly stipend. Is that one of those tomato? I always forget.
Yep. Stipend.
Yeah, okay. Stipend, whatever. But the monthly stipend they gave to teachers conveniently was roughly the same amount of their union dues. There was a contract in Payette, Idaho, explicitly paid teachers to take time off to come down to the Capitol and lobby and testify against or against whatever they want. So instead of teaching, they're taking time off and going and engaging in mostly left-wing politics at the Capitol. So we said, and there's literally pages of examples of, as far as like all of these activities, you know, the school districts are sharing teachers' personal information without their consent with the unions. They're forcing the teachers to interact with the unions. And again, this is not just the teachers' unions, but for the sake of this, you know, podcast, because this happens a lot with unions everywhere. They were distributing union materials in the school district. I could go on and on and on. So this bill just said, do whatever you want, join the teachers union, pay the teachers union. We're not going to pay for it. And it was a hard battle. We started this fight 3 years ago, and like I said, we finally got it done. So I'm excited.
So why didn't it pass, you know, 3 years ago? A lot of people look at Idaho and they say, look, you know, the teachers unions are a left-wing group. That's no surprise. They give a lot of their money to Democrats, at least nationally. What in the world took Idaho a few years? I know it's, you know, a few years is, on the grand scheme of things, pretty quickly to, you know, have a bill idea become law. But a lot of people nationally might be wondering, you know, hey, this should be pretty cut and dry. It should be, you know, they put it up for a vote and it's passed. But what was kind of the pushback, and how did we get here?
Man, I mean, the answer to that question. It doesn't just apply to this bill. So like a lot of people just don't know, right? So a lot of red states, Idaho's a pretty red state, but I think we're teetering on purple depending on the day, depending on what time of day you ask me. I kind of go back and forth. But, you know, compared to like California or New York or something like that, we're like insanely red. But my bar is pretty high for what that means. So Idaho, about 85% of our elections are decided in the Republican primary. So we have a Republican primary coming up May 19th. I'm just like, there's a few spots in Idaho, Meridian, Boise, Pocatello, Twin Falls. There's certain areas, Blaine County, up north in Coeur d'Alene. There's a couple districts that are kind of, they could go either way, liberal, Republican, conservative, Democrat, whatever. But most of Idaho will just vote for whoever the Republican candidate is. So in the primary, 85% of people who win the primary, that will be de facto the next representative. So, for instance, I have a Democrat challenger every year. I don't even have to lift a finger to do anything, because Idaho, my district, has never, ever elected a Democrat senator. But so the real battle's in the primary. So knowing that, a lot of liberals or Democrats will register as a Republican, which is their prerogative, and they'll run as a Republican because that's the only way they can get in. So they'll talk a big game during the election, and then once people get in, then you see their true colors. So that's why it took so long, and that's why it takes so long, and not just Idaho, but other red states. Because you say you have a Republican governor, he's endorsed by Trump. We have the Senate and the House, and every elected office is controlled by Republicans. But we still have, you know, the Republican umbrellas. It's a big tent. I would rather have it be a smaller tent, but there's really no way to police that. So we have a lot of liberal Republicans. We have maybe not a lot of liberal. We have a good chunk. We have a lot of moderate Republicans, and then you have people like me who are on the conservative side. So that's why it takes so long to get these things done. You know, the Republican of 2026 is not the Republican of, you know, 1980 something. So that's what we're constantly up against. It should be easy. It should be a slam dunk. I'm like, yeah, it should. But a lot of these guys aren't conservative.
So, Senator Lenney, this bill passed your chamber 20-14 after the Hail Mary, the radiator cap, and getting it a floor vote. You still had, what, eight Republicans voted against it, and all six of the Democrats voted against it. Were these like the same kind of Republicans that would like vote against school choice and other more conservative issues, or was it a mixed bag?
No, it's the first one. I don't have the list in front of me or whatever.
Yeah, me either.
But the Republicans who voted against this typically would also vote against school choice or anything that you and I and probably a lot of your viewers would call like education freedom. So they love the unions and the teachers unions, and there's a lot of people in the building just generally speaking, who are beholden to lobbyists, to unions. But I'm not one of those people. And there were 20 Republicans, in the Idaho Senate who got it done. And then so what happened originally, we can get into the original story, or where do you want to go with it? Because this bill took a very non-traditional road.
Yeah, so get into that. It didn't get a committee vote, and the guy who was the chair of that committee was a co-sponsor of the bill. So what in the world happened there? Is there any inside baseball of why it got bottled up in that committee when it was the co-sponsors of the bill was the chair? And also on that same vein, was there any question about whether Governor Little would sign it? Did everybody kind of know he was going to sign it, or was there real concern about him maybe vetoing it?
I wasn't on the I'll start backwards. With the governor thing, I wasn't concerned about him not signing it. I think we kind of put him in a box, and this was a very, very popular bill amongst just general Idahoans. So I would have been shocked if he vetoed it. So some people, I don't talk to the governor's office. They don't talk to me. I stay in my lane. They stay in theirs. There's some people who are in the governor's office every week. I've never even met the guy. So it's probably a mutual feeling that not really interested. But there were from what I heard, most people weren't concerned about it. But you never know, because there's a lot of pressure once you get up that high to sign or not sign something. But so what happened originally, we've had this bill for a couple of years. This year there was a plan to get it done. Let me fast forward a little bit. So and again, I'm one piece of a very large puzzle. There were other senators who got this done, who helped get it done on the Senate side. Senator Ben Taves, Senator Cindy Carlson, Senator Camille Blaylock. There were a handful of people kind of working behind the scenes, talking to people, making sure we had the votes, making sure everybody understood what was going on. Once it got to the Senate side, so we started it in the House. It passed committee. It passed the House floor. It came over to the Senate, and it was supposed to be in my committee. And the chairman of the committee, like you said, was one of the co-sponsors. So, if you're a co-sponsor, you're probably going to want to hear your own bill, right? But what happened is just all of a sudden he said, "We're not going to hear the bill," and everyone said, "What are you talking about? It's your bill, man. Like, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I've been talking with the unions, and I think there's a better way to get this done." And I still don't understand what conversation they had, but what I do know is that he made some kind of deal with the teachers unions. By the way, the unions donated to his campaign, maxed out donation to his campaign. But I mean, it's not a
ton of money. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he made some kind of deal, had some kind of arrangement with the unions, not just the teachers unions, but the unions. And he just said, no, he said, under no circumstances will I hear this bill.
Oh, my goodness. And this was private. He wasn't saying this publicly, was he? This was all, I don't remember seeing this. I just remember people whispering about it.
He's not like me. He doesn't have a big mouth and doesn't talk publicly a lot, but he was not hiding it. He wasn't like, "Hey, hush, hush." Like, he was just like, under no circumstances will I hear this bill. We're not going to hear this bill. And you could imagine everyone said, what are you talking? You're on the bill.
You're on the bill.
Yeah,
so what's interesting to me is, real quick, I have this clip of the Hail Mary moment that you referenced, where you come in and you're saying, "You know what? This is what we're going to do. We are radiator capping. We're going to get it to the floor." And what I noticed in this clip,
collective bargaining was
is that
he's proposed
after you propose the amendment, the first guy who comes up to say, "Don't vote for it,"
radiator cap the bill.
Is Dan Foreman, the guy we're talking about, who's the chair of the committee, who made a deal with the teachers unions. And he basically just says here something along the lines of, where you circumvented the committee process, and, you went against the will of the body. And Chip and I talked about this on a previous podcast where we pulled up this clip and we're like, well, the will of the body is 2014. That was the will. He was the one holding up the process by not putting it up for a vote.
Yeah. And so what happened for people who don't, because, even some people who pay attention, they're like, what's radiator capping?
Right.
So the bill was effectively dead, right? Like if a chairman doesn't want to hear a bill, they just don't hear it, and then it's dead. So what we did, and the bill, the original bill that passed the House and made it to his committee, that he said, I'm not going to hear it. The original bill was actually a bit more expansive than just teachers unions. But the goal, we said, hey, let's narrow it down a little bit and just focus on teachers unions. So what we did is something called a radiator cap. Now imagine if you take your car to the mechanic and something's wrong with your car, and you come back and it's a totally new car, and you're like, where did my car go? You're like, no, it's the same car, and they swap the engine and the car out, but they put the same radiator cap on it. So that's, hopefully I'm explaining that well, but basically you gut an existing bill. It has to be in the same subject. So in this case, it was education. So what we did is we took another education bill that had already passed committee and was on the amending order, to make some changes. So when we got to the amending order, we took the original bill that we were amending. We kept the bill number, and which is now House Bill 516. We took everything out of it, and then we put the teachers union stuff in, and we put the radiator cap on. So that's what a radiator cap is. It rarely works. People rarely try it. The last time it was successful was 2023 in the Idaho Senate. We did it 3 years ago. I think it was a tax bill. I forgot. But it rarely ever happens, and when it does, it rarely ever works. But like I said, we had a team effort. A lot of people, talking to a lot of people, answering questions, concerns. And, like you said, at the end of the day, it was 2014. So we gutted the bill. We presented it on the floor. It passed. Had to go back to the House. They had to concur with our amendments because we can't just change their bill and it passes. So they voted for it again. And then it went to the governor's desk and he signed it. So it was a non-traditional way to get it done, but we got it done. And I think it's probably the most consequential bill of 2026 for sure, for our Idaho legislative session.
Senator, in seeing what happened, and I know you get frustrated because I've been in your shoes before, and it especially happens with Republicans, unfortunately. We were talking earlier about these folks voting against this. It's a cowardice, and it really bothers me because these are the same folks that will go home and they'll talk about how they're for freedom. They're for gun freedom, they're for hunting freedom, they're for economic freedom. They support parents and students. But then when it really comes time to actually have to do something, they do what this guy did, which is a very cowardly move, and then not even really willing to explain it. Like, okay, you're now siding with the teachers union. Explain why. Like, why are you against this policy? Because the policy is very simple. The government shouldn't be using taxpayer money to fund private organizations to then come lobby and work against the government. Now, in this case, there's no other organization in Idaho that I'm aware of where the government is processing paychecks and all this stuff. So why are these people that do this stuff? Look, if you're against it, go up and explain. Like, stand up and explain your policy position. And it's just so frustrating when they play these behind the door games and do the stuff that he did.
I don't know, man, because he actually Senator Foreman's a pretty conservative guy. We probably agree on 90% of issues. So this not only kind of baffled a lot of us. And I still don't understand why he did it or what this deal they made was, or what, I've heard rumors and stuff, but who knows, whatever. He hasn't said it, So yeah. I think you bring up kind of a broader point of, I think the real kind of pandemic we have in this country, not just Idaho, but everywhere, is you have men who lack a chest. We have men, C.S. Lewis wrote Men Without Chests. It takes moral courage and conviction to do this job and do it right. And, people often get elected and they typically don't become more conservative. They typically, not everyone, but if someone's going to slide, usually they're sliding left, not right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that about Dan, because he's actually a really conservative guy. So I don't understand. It's kind of a black box. I'm just looking at it going, I don't know what's in there. I'm kind of guessing, but I wish he would have at least told us.
Yeah.
He said, well, can't tell you yet. It's something's big. Something in the future is coming. It's going to be big. I said, well, okay, but what does that have to do with right now?
Right.
You know, what does that have to do with today and us collecting $4 point whatever million a year and sending 25% of it to Washington, D.C. to a group who wants to like trans our kids and push woke gender bending ideology on us? Why we don't want to fund that anymore. So I don't know what the deal was or what the conversation was. It must have been good, because you might have appeased some people, but his constituents are very conservative as well. So I'm hoping it doesn't come back to bite him, in the election coming up. So.
Well, it looks like the Idaho Education Association is not happy about it. They used to endorse Governor Brad Little back in 2018. I think I might be mixing something up, but I think I was the one who got their endorsements in 2022 and listed them online, all the Republicans that were endorsed by the Idaho teachers unions, and Brad Little was one of them. And they just issued a vote of no confidence in the governor. Do you think the governor is really missing out on anything by the teachers unions dropping him?
I don't think he cares. I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, he's going to do what he wants to do. But I think he made the right move there, because if he would have vetoed that, then you would have had a whole other group of people. I would imagine in that case, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't in that situation. But I mean, the teachers union, they have a campaign right now in Idaho, for example, called May Matters, because our Republican, our primary is up in May, and they have a whole campaign with their stated goal of unelecting people like me, people who vote for educational freedom and parental rights, and people who say, hey, maybe government school isn't as great as we've been, told, that things like that. So you have the teachers unions actively, openly, unapologetically going for our heads. But it's like Idaho is still, at its core, a very red conservative state. So it's kind of like, good luck. I mean, I don't know how many scalps they're going to take. I think it's going to be very minimal. They talk a lot, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to flip a lot of seats.
Yeah, you come at the king, you better not miss.
Well, to that point too,
they're going to miss.
Yeah, but to that point, and this has been the problem that Corey and I talk about a lot, is that not all teachers in Idaho agree with their particular ideology. And so that's the real problem, is they're taking money from someone who may be a Brian Lenney supporter and then using that money against Brian Lenney. And that's why we just need to get their money out of politics 100%, because you shouldn't be taking money from people to use against their own self-interests.
Yeah. And that's, my mom, so I grew up I've been Southern California. I'm 47 years old right now. I moved to Idaho when I was about 30. So 2010, before the COVID wave came, before it was cool to move here. But my mom was a public school teacher for 30 years in California. Conservative, Republican, not one dime of hers went to political activities. You guys probably know more than I do about different states, how you can choose to divert money to, she said, none of my money. But at the end of the day, it's all fungible anyway, right? I don't know how you manage that. But still, she checked the box saying, I don't want any of my money going to political activities. So I come from a family with, like I said, my mom taught my whole life. 30 years public school. But I think most teachers are good people trying to do the right things for kids. I think at least in Idaho, the loud minority typically overpowers them. I live, I don't want to get him in trouble, but I live very close to a gentleman who is a principal at a public school in the area. Conservative guy, Republican guy. He can't stand the unions. He can't stand all the woke stuff, all the things we complain about in education, the Common Core, which is still kind of lingering. Even though we got rid of it, it's still kind of lingering. But I mean, there's a lot of really good conservative teachers who want to actually help these kids and do the right things for kids. The teachers unions, though, they come across as, we're just here to negotiate pay and this and that. And it's like, yes, but primarily, like we talked about earlier, in the last several years, they've given over $600 million to left-wing organizations. And, that's what we're fighting. Like, there's a scene in Tombstone. Have you seen the movie Tombstone, the one with Val Kilmer and what's his name? Kurt Russell? Yeah. So there's this great scene. Hopefully this analogy makes sense. I just came up with it. But there's this great scene where they post, it's Tombstone, Arizona. I was actually just there last week, weirdly, a week ago. We were down at the border doing a trip, and I went and visited where this happened. It was kind of cool. But there's a scene where the sheriff, who's Wyatt Earp at the time, he makes a new rule saying you can't carry a gun in town. And before that, it was just, Wild West. People were carrying guns in and out and talking about the movie here. And so he's posting the sign, like, no guns in town. So these guys, these cowboys come up and they're complaining. And he goes out. One of the other sheriff's deputies says, nobody's saying you can't carry a gun. Or he says, nobody's saying you can't own a gun. Nobody's saying you can't carry a gun. We're just saying you can't carry a gun in town. So with the teachers union bill that we just did, we're not saying you can't be in the union. We're not saying you can't pay union dues. We're not saying you can't do all the left-wing organizing you want. All we're saying is we're not going to facilitate and pay for it anymore. That's all this bill did. And I really hope a lot of states watch the clips, watch the debates, read the bill. It'd be awesome if a lot of other states pick this up.
Yeah, so here's a clip of one of the bad actors, I think, in the public school system. I think you were the first person to share it. I grabbed it, put some captions on it, but I want to get your response to a Democrat senator who was in the public school system for decades. Here's the clip for listeners.
We stand instead of parents. When your children walk into our classroom, they become ours. And we listen to their fears, we dry their tears, we celebrate their successes, and yes, we find a new way when they fail. And as you know, throughout this country, teachers have stood in the line of fire to shield your children. And they would do it in a heartbeat because those kids in that classroom, they're ours. They're ours too.
What was going on there?
Are we allowed to cuss on this podcast? I'm not going to, but I was literally shocked. And I used to sit by, that was Senator, she's a Democrat senator from Boise. I used to sit by Senator Ward King on the education committee on the Senate side. And I'm still on, let's see, one other committee with her. That's like nice lady and everything. I always say that Janie, that's like if my mom was a liberal Democrat, that's she has the same demeanor and stuff. But I was actually shocked when she said that. When what's the thing they say when someone says the quiet part out loud?
Let the mask slip. Yep.
And that's how they look. They look at him as their, I don't have any words, probably more than you. That's the first time I've heard anything like that. There's a reason we homeschool our 4 kids, right? Our kids do not belong to anyone but us. And I don't need to belabor that point, but I don't know if it was like a Freudian slip or if she wrote that out and planned to say it, but and there was a Senator Josh Cole. He's down, I think, he's in the Twin Falls area. He stood up in debate and said, nope, those are not your kids. There are our kids belong to parents, not the government school system. So, I mean, that just shows you this is not just about education. This is ideological. They're trying to take over, and they're doing a great job in some areas. They're trying to indoctrinate these kids into all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I was blown away. I've never heard them say something like that out loud on purpose in public.
Yeah, every once in a while it slips in different states, and this, it's not very often, but it seems to be something that's like a deeply held belief, but doesn't come out in the open all that much. And we're thankful when it does, because show us who you really are so we can believe you. But was she trying to say, like, this bill is like it means you're anti-teacher or something? What was her line of logic, if there was any? Was she trying to say, like, teachers really care about your kids? Why are you attacking teachers? I don't know exactly. I didn't watch the full debate, but
essentially the second one, basically this is an attack on teachers, and you hate teachers and you hate public education. It's like the bill's right here, and she was arguing like off the screen. We're like, here's the bill. She was way over here. Like I said, this bill doesn't prevent teachers or teachers unions from doing any of the things they're doing now. We're just not going to pay for it. I don't know how, like, I wish people could get that through their heads. You can do whatever you want. We're not going to use taxpayer money to fund it. That's all it did. So she took this, and the liberals, and liberals in the Republican Party as well. Like I said, we had about, I think, 8 Republicans voted against this also. They see it as an attack on teachers, and you hate kids and you hate public school. Which is obviously not the case. Everybody has friends who are teachers. Most of my kids' friends are in public school. Like I feel dumb even I don't even need to qualify it. Like
my mom was in the public school system for decades, and she just retired a couple of years ago. And so I would get, like, if I hate public school teachers, I'm doing a really bad job at it. But
yeah, and I even called my mom. Like, I actually called my mom the day before this clip you played, and I said, "Hey, Mom, what do you think about this bill?" And I kind of ran her through it, and she said, "Why?" I'm like, "Because I want to use you in my debate."
There you go.
But I said, "Tell me your honest opinion." And she said, "I think it's great. I don't think any taxpayer money should be going to fund union political." My mom thinks it's great. She taught, like I said, public school in Southern California for 30 years in Riverside County. So, this is not an attack on teachers or schools or kids. Obviously, the unions will frame it that way for obvious reasons. But, there others, I wish I should have pulled this up, but there have been other states who have done this, and it actually shows that the union dues being paid out once they're not automatically coming out of the paycheck. Because most teachers don't, how often do you look at your pay stub? Never. People who are on like a W-2 kind of job. Or like no one really, I don't know. I never did. I never look at my W-2s that often. But once people have to consciously, it's time to pay the union dues, log on to whatever the website, log in. Most people are just say, nah, I don't want to do it. So it's actually been shown to, I think, take a lot of money out of the pockets of the unions, which I think is a great thing, because the unions are campaigning against, in Idaho at least, the Idaho way of life, traditional family values. They're all the same stuff you see in blue states is happening in Idaho too. Yeah, we just have a lot more people who are standing up saying like, nope, nope, nope.
And if the union isn't providing value to the membership enough to get them to get off their butts and sign up for it, then maybe they deserve to lose funding.
Yeah, but
exactly.
Senator,
Exactly.
You brought up a point about, and you see it happen now a lot in these type of debates. They don't want to talk about the bill. I'm sure she didn't reference any of the actual language in the bill. They just go straight to, you hate teachers, you hate children, right? And it's just such a lazy way to have a dialogue about public policy. And I think voters, no matter what side you're on, should expect more out of their representatives than to just say, each time you disagree with someone, just say, well, you hate teachers, you hate dogs, you hate whatever. Like, that's not a legitimate policy debate. And again, no matter what side you're on, voters and constituents deserve actual policy debates.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just this. You perfectly put. It's not just this subject either. I mean, we've had Democrats in the Senate, at least. Like, I know it. Well, I'm in the Senate, so I see more of the Senate stuff. But I mean, there have been times where, and these are like, here's another thing I think is worth mentioning. People think we go to the state house and there's just this constant like battlefield. We talk to the Democrats, they talk to us. Everybody talks and is friendly because you have to sit next to these people, for years. That doesn't mean you have to hate them, or like a lot of them are really great, nice people. We just strongly disagree on a lot of political things. But I mean, we've had Democrats in the Senate stand up on bills, like I said earlier, maybe the bill is right here and they start arguing and then it turns into like white nationalism and then trans genocide and all. And we're like, what are you talking about? This bill has nothing to do with nationalism or trans genocide. And so, yeah, they do that a lot. They get up and give their campaign speeches that have nothing to do with the policy. It actually is one of my pet peeves when people aren't you already said it. I don't need to, I guess, reiterate it. But if you're going to argue the bill, argue the bill. Section 1, paragraph 2, whatever says this. Well, I don't like that because blah, blah. But yeah, they just did a blanket attack as you hate teachers in schools and this is horrible.
Yeah, it's
so,
just intellectual
welcome to politics, I guess.
Yeah.
So getting back to debating the bill, I have a clip of Brian Lenney from back in the day. We got a throwback clip from the school choice battles in Idaho, which is another one where it was kind of a head scratcher for a while as to why Idaho took so long. But check this out, a quick 6-second clip of Senator Lenney.
If a private school underperforms, they get shut down. But when a public school underperforms, they get more money. If a private...
There we go. Bam. And so tell us a little bit about the battles for school choice in Idaho. I know there's a new program that just is rolling out. People were applying for it. It's a tax credit. Could you give us a little bit of backstory of, how we got this bill passed? Is there more that needs to be done? And what was kind of the biggest roadblock for a while when it came to school choice?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, different people mean different things by school choice, right? But for me, I look at it as giving parents more options than they, if I could just simplify it, giving parents and students more options than they have right now. We pushed, that clip was from, I think that was 2023.
Yeah, February 2023.
Yeah, we had that big, you were well aware of it, that big education savings account bill. Myself and Senator Nichols pushed that. We got it through Senate Education Committee after 2 days of testimony. We had to schedule just days of people coming in, but we got it to the Senate floor and it died on the Senate floor. We knew it would probably die on the Senate floor because it was a pretty big, we were going for the grand slam on that one. Yep. And something I've learned, that was my first year in the Senate. Something I've learned that a lot of people learn and a lot of people just instinctively know, but I had to learn it the hard ways. Typically you get singles. You don't really get the grand slam. So you have to do, like I said, one bite of the apple, then a second bite. And it might take years. For instance, I had an anti-SLAPP bill, totally different subject than we're talking about. I thought it was perfect. Well, it died in 2025, but then I brought it back, it died in 2024. I brought it back again last year in 2025. So some of these things take years. I think people say, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Right. I'm like, if it was up to me and we had an easy button, I'd be just pushing that button all the time. Let's do that. But that's just not how it works. It's like pushing a boulder uphill slowly. So the ESA bill died, but that was the first time an education savings account bill was ever debated on the Senate floor. And then we came back. We've done little bits and pieces here and there, but the biggest one we got was House Bill 93, and you already mentioned that. We did that in 2025 last year, and that was what I would probably consider the first objective school choice bill we've done in Idaho. It's Idaho's first ever. It's a refundable tax credit for private and homeschool education. So you get up to $5,000 per student, $7,500 if you have a special needs student. It covers non-public school tuition, tutoring, textbook fees, even transportation. And we cap that at $50 million a year and 10,000 students. But there's something they say in politics all the time. If you get the camel's nose under the tent, that's the first bill, and then he could just upset the whole apple cart, tip the whole tent over. But first you got to get his nose under there, then he can. So that House Bill 93, I feel like was getting the camel's nose under the tent. And what's really cool on that one is we had this horrible program I've never liked, and there's a lot of people I like who liked this program, and I'm on
The micro grant.
Yeah, and empowering parents.
Yeah.
And that was a $30 million a year program where we were just giving parents money. People were signing up for jujitsu, buying Legos. We heard stories from people buying, parents are buying musical equipment for themselves and saying it's for their kids. We're just giving away $30 million a year. And there was a marketplace with just all this stuff you could buy. And I think it was...
was that just for kids in public schools too?
Kids in public, private, homeschool, whatever. Like you just apply for it and they gave you money, but it was called Empowering Parents, and it was just like this weird junk drawer giveaway. I mean, there was like Amazon, all this. It was just giving people money that they could buy stuff.
I remember one year it must have been around 2023 or something, where there was a bill to do something like that, but you could also use it for private school tuition. And then all of a sudden the teachers unions endorsed the bill after they struck the word tuition at it. Like that was the only change. As long as you stayed in your public school, you could use it for all these extra goodies, but you could not choose a different, you couldn't escape the public school system with it.
Well,
at least at first.
They see any, the teachers unions and the real hardcore government school advocates, they see anything you're doing for private or homeschoolers as an attack on them, even though it's not. That doesn't make any sense. But it was Senator Camille Blaylock. She's in Caldwell, Idaho. I think it's District 11. She ran a bill last year to get rid of Empowering Parents, and that passed. Obviously, the governor signed it, and they took that, like essentially that $30 million helped free up money for this other one. So that Empowering Parents, that might have been the camel's nose under the tent.
Yeah.
And that was just giving people stuff, but I don't think so. I think House Bill 93 is the camel getting his nose under the tent. And, there's different, that's kind of, cracks the door open. We'll see what else comes out of that. We had a great bill this year. It was Senate Bill 1336. And what that did is essentially, as you guys know just as well, probably better than I do, when we got Common Core, we got rid of all Western civilization, all the classics and all those things kind of went away. So we had Senate Bill 1336 this year passed, and it mandated, I wish I pulled up the list, but it would take me a minute to find it, but it mandated that we re-add all of these books back, all of these topics, all the stuff that Common Core gutted. And then, the states have been saying, at least red states, hey, we're in Idaho, hey, we got rid of Common Core. I'm like, okay, well, that's like saying we Common Core, we moved in all the furniture. We changed the furniture in the house, was Common Core. And they said, we got rid of it. So you took all the old furniture out. But I'm like, well, now there's no furniture. Maybe you got rid of it, but you got to put the old stuff back. So we're constantly fighting, in my opinion, from where I sit to kind of put the old stuff back. So Senate Bill 1336, I want to say that was Senator Kelly Anthon's bill, the pro tem, to mandate that Idaho school districts start teaching Western civilization again. So there's a couple of these things happening. We just had, I believe it was in 2024. Don't quote me on this. I don't have the bill number or anything, but we had to have a bill to like I said, Common Core, we changed how we taught reading. It was, you guys probably know what's like sight or
phonics based versus whole word.
Yeah, so people weren't learning to read. They're like, look at the word and memorize it.
Whole word. Yes,
So we had to have a bill. I think it was in 2024. It might have been 2025, just to say, hey, we're going to go back to phonics based reading because that's how kids learn to read. So we're still trying to recover from Common Core, but we're making strides every year in Idaho.
Yeah, Senator, and you start to see it, especially when you dive into anything around educational freedom. The opposition will always frame it over resources, which makes no sense whatsoever, because basically Idaho will have the same number of kids next year that go to school as this year. it depends on where they go to school, homeschool, private school, charter school, public school, whatever, but it's basically the same number of students. You're basically going to have the same number of teachers. So what you're really arguing about is who gets the opportunity to shape the mindset of those children. And what you ultimately realize on all of this type of legislation, and it goes back to what the senator said from the well, this is about control. It's not about money. It's really not even about jobs. It is totally about control. And they believe that if they could control those kids from the ages of 4 to 18, they got them for the rest of their life. And they don't want to let a single one to escape the system. And so, it's what I learned early on in the fight over educational freedom. Not about money. It's all about control.
Yeah, power. I agree 1,000%. Power and control. There was a guy. He died. I think last year. Might have been this year, but I believe it was last year. Is a pastor, Vadi Bakum. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. But he said he had this. I was at a conference in Minneapolis. He was speaking at years ago. It wasn't even an education conference. It was a Christian thing. And he said, if you send your kids to Caesar, don't be surprised if they come back as Romans.
It's my favorite quote.
Yeah, it's so good and it's so true, and it applies in so many contexts, right? But you have left wing. You guys, this is what you guys do, right? But you have these left wing organizations and personalities and people who've been shaping the public school system for decades, over a century, I think. And they, public school was right there in the Communist Manifesto. People, when you say that, people freak out. Then they go look it up and go, oh yeah, it is right there in the Communist Manifesto, free public education for all kids. And they have a goal of creating good little Marxists, and they're doing a hell of a job doing it, which is why I think COVID was such a blessing and a curse, because for a lot of parents, for the first time, they, with the Zoom calls and all the remote learning, they got to see all the stuff their children were learning, and they had no idea. It was like pulling back the curtain, like, wait, your teacher said what? You're learning what? They told you what? So COVID was a huge blessing that a lot of people said, nope, not doing that
Not
anymore.
today.
Yep. So we're going to homeschool, private school, whatever. We're going to figure it out, but we're not going to keep sending our kids to Caesar and being shocked when they come back as Romans. So Senator
Lenney, when we started, you said you homeschooled your kids. When we've done some of these school choice battles in redder states, we've actually gotten some pushback from some of the homeschool crowd, because they've said, well, with government shekels comes government shackles, which my quick response is usually, well, look at Connecticut, look at other blue states that are regulating homeschooling without any school choice. Did you deal with that when you were fighting for school choice in the legislature? Did you hear from those groups? Did you have to talk to them in your office or anything, or email them? Or
yes to all of the above. They're very, 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 very vocal and passionate. There's a group called Homeschool Idaho. My wife goes to the conference every year. We're like card carrying, and when I say we homeschooled my kids, I mean my wife does, and right. I chime in. I teach a class in the fall, though. I taught logic and logical fallacies last fall to junior hires, because we started a co-op, and there's 30 plus families, I think. We started a co-op, and it's really fun. But Homeschool Idaho, there's a certain, I don't know what the right word, faction isn't the right word, but that's what I feel like saying, of people on the right, homeschoolers, who just hate all of this stuff, school choice. And I get where I almost don't disagree with them. There's that fine nuance where I'm like, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but there's another side to this you're not looking at. But yeah, they have some force in the state. Kudos to them. Mm-hmm. We agree on all the homeschooling stuff and a lot of this stuff, but they just don't want any government oversight or control of homeschooling, and neither do I, mm-hmm. by the way. And that's why we did, I said early on, before I read House Bill 93, the tax credit bill we did in 2025, I said, if this messes with homeschool in any way, not only will I not vote for it, I'm going to be the loudest opponent you've ever seen, and we're going to kill this bill. Because initially, it started in the House, and I said, I don't read every bill until I need to vote on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I read every bill I vote on, but if I don't have to vote on it for a month, I'm not going to, depending on the bill. So my initial just glance of it was, oh, this messes with homeschooling. I'm a no. And then I sat down and really, when it got time, like, oh, it passed the House, I better kind of figure. Then I went through it with a fine tooth comb and said, oh, actually, no, it doesn't. So I'm going to vote for it. But, Idaho is still one of the freest homeschooling states in America. And this House Bill 93, it ran through the tax committee. It's a tax credit.
Right.
So you have Homeschool Idaho, who I respect, and we pay them. We're part of the organization. Like I said, my wife goes to the conference every year in Meridian, Idaho. They were coming out against a tax credit. We have child tax credits. So this bill was very intentionally crafted, and it was not my bill. It was Senator Lori Din Hartog was the main person running it, and I believe it was Wendy Horman.
Wendy, yeah,
she's in DC now, so she got called up to the big show. But they were very careful about making sure this did not interfere with homeschool education, with oversight, with curriculum. If it did, I would go to the mats. I would die on that hill and I'd get kicked out of the Senate. I would keep yelling and screaming, but it doesn't mess with homeschooling. It's a tax credit. It's something you do on TurboTax. Literally, I just did I do my personal taxes on TurboTax. I have a business guy file them for me, and then I do the personal ones on TurboTax, and I think I'm doing it right. But literally on TurboTax, it asked about House Bill 93. Like it's a tax thing, not so I think it was the lightest possible touch. I think we found that sweet spot where it's the lightest possible touch, but it also is significant and consequential in that it's going to help a lot of parents and students who government school doesn't work for them. It's going to help them open up other possibilities.
And it's all voluntary. No one has to use it if they don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to use it. I don't even know if I qualify. I don't even. Right. I'm not going to use it just because I don't need it. Like we don't need it. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to take a dime. I didn't qualify. I didn't sign up. I don't know if I qualify or not. But even if I did, I just wouldn't use it. I'm like, no. I would rather see this money go to what do they call them? Switchers. I'd rather go.
Yeah, get out of public school. Yeah.
No matter what. I'd rather see the money go to help someone who feels like maybe trapped in their situation. I'd rather help those kids and parents get out of that situation and get into something new.
Yeah. Senator, you mentioned the classics a while ago, and my problem with those who try to be so ideologically pure that they create, this very small world is that when you take the classics out of the school system and you don't teach people to think and rationalize and use logic, ultimately, there's going to be so many people that don't do that. They're just going to get rid of homeschooling altogether. So it's in the long term, you're actually almost funding this idea that's going to come back and bite the homeschoolers if you don't offer educational freedom to a lot of people. And so if you're waiting for the absolute perfect educational freedom law to come along, that's never going to happen, right? So you've got to take the best that you can, move the ball down the field, and get more people to have those freedom options, and then they get taught the classics. They get to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be great citizens later on that aren't going to take away your right to homeschool.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And like you just said, and we've talked about before, is most, and I have other I know other people who are state legislators all over the country, and most of the time you don't get. Maybe you'll see a grand slam every now and then on a certain subject, but most of the time, I use that incrementalism. It's not ideal. It's not what I want, but I'm also a realist. Mm-hmm. I also live in the real world, and I say, what is politically possible right now in this moment? Here's what I want to do, but maybe only this is possible. So maybe we can do this. The next year we do this. Next year and then we eventually get there, because people are scared of the grand slam. So yeah, I think we take. I think we take. If you want to get a touchdown, just go 10 yards at a time. Yep. It'd be great to do a Hail Mary, and sometimes it works. Like, I mean, technically, I guess the teachers union bill was a Hail
Yeah.
Mary, and it worked, but that's very rare. It hasn't worked in 3 years. We haven't done a radiator cap in 3 years. So, but I think most people, it's helpful for people who aren't engaged in politics every day or who aren't elected, maybe to realize if they're giving their representative or senator a hard time about a certain thing, maybe your representative or your senator agrees with you, but the
Yep.
political reality on the ground is, hey, this year we can only get 15 yards. But I want 40. So do I. But the political reality is we will not get more than 15. So should we take 15 or just do nothing? And there's a lot of people who say a bunch of stuff against like incrementalism, but I think at the end of the day, that's what seems to be, the way to get things done. It's not what I want. It's not ideal. Like I said, I would do grand slams every day, but I try to live in reality. There's a lot of people who have their head in the clouds and they talk a big game on their campaigns and town halls, and they get nothing done,
Right.
because they live in la la land, and they try to do a grand slam on everything and
and then don't
that's
get
just not how
anything
it works.
passed. Yeah, we can't make perfect the enemy of the good. I will say, as you've been in office, Brian, the Idaho has gone up in the rankings on education freedom. Here's Alex' report card, for example. Idaho now made the top 10. It was, one of the laggards for a long time on education freedom priorities, especially school choice. I just wanted to get your take. We're coming up to an hour on what else is on deck for conservative education reform in Idaho. What else would you like to see done to be done? It's probably a lot in that question for a short amount of time. But what are a couple of things that you think that's still kind of hanging out there that Idaho should try next?
I'm probably not the best person to ask that question. A lot of my focus has been, at least the last 2 years, has been more on like health and welfare kind of stuff, Medicaid, that kind of thing. But in education, I think one of the biggest issues that rarely gets talked about is we're still paying for, like, we had a bill, actually, I think it was the last day of the session in the Senate, myself and Representative Steve Tanner, we had a resolution passed, one of the strongly worded letters. But we're still obligated legally to pay for illegal aliens in school. So that's our money and that's our resources going to kids to know it's not the kids' fault, but we're paying for children of illegal aliens and kids who shouldn't be here. That's a problem. I think we had another bill, couldn't get, like we talked about when we first started in Republican Idaho, we couldn't get it passed, where one of my bills, all we wanted to do was audit the schools and say how much money is going to who, what, when, where. We want to know where all our money's going. How many illegal aliens are we paying for? That couldn't get any traction in Idaho. But that's one thing. I think there's something that has been talked about long before I showed up in 2021, and it'll probably be, it's not going away until we fix it. I think a lot of these education problems, I'm trying to think of a better word. A lot of the things that are contentious in education, I think we're treating the symptom, not the problem. So I think I know for a fact, I don't think even liberals or moderates would disagree with me that the funding formula is archaic in Idaho. How we decide who gets what. There's school districts in Boise, for example, who have lost students over the last 10 years. Like 10 years ago, they had more students than today, but they're getting more money. Like the funding formula needs to be addressed. And I'm not the guy to do that. That's a different skill set than my mind has, but I know it's a problem, and everyone has a different idea on how to fix that. But I think our money is very poorly spent. We have programs here like IDLA, Idaho Digital Learning Alliance. We just cut about $13 million. We just cut their budget by about 50%. But we have these really piss poor virtual education vendors who were paying tens of millions of dollars a year to do ChatGPT correspondence courses with our kids. Really low quality education, I would call it. And I intentionally hope everyone sees the air quotes. So why are we paying for this we're paying for a lot of things that aren't serving our kids. Let me just say that they're serving our kids, but they're serving them poorly. So I think there's a lot of cutting and reducing and consolidating we still need to do, where, people on the left, they just want to grow. And we can never have enough money to someone on the left. But, like I said, in the ESA debate from 2023, we've been betting on the same losing horse every year. It's time that maybe, have we ever thought about taking a step back and putting a new horse in the race? And I think with House Bill 93 that we passed and some of these steps we're taking, we're starting to kind of change the game in Idaho.
All right. Yeah, I agree, Senator Lenney, and in large part thanks to your help in the legislature pushing for education freedom policies, getting the banning of taxpayer funding of teachers unions across the finish line, along with your colleagues as well. But you were there for the Hail Mary. I will say we've gone 5 minutes over, so we are going to cut it now. Respect everybody's time. I get worse and worse of this, it seems, every week, but thank you so much, Senator Lenney, for joining us. Everybody go follow him on X. He is one of, if not the best fighters for education freedom in Idaho. So make sure you go follow him. This was the Red Pen Podcast, co-hosted by myself and CEO of AFFT, Chip Rogers. Until next time, have a good week, everybody. And other states out there, go to Brian Lenney and ask him how they got it done on ending taxpayer funding of teachers unions. Idaho shouldn't be the only state. I know there's some others. Every state should do the same thing. So thank you guys. Until next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.